Good morning from the aquarium. Rebecca here. My blue shrimp is out today. This thing disappears for like weeks at a time. I never know if it's still alive, but it is out and about today. Maybe you will see it. Wanted to talk to you guys today about the parable of the wheat and the tares, because I have a theory about this that I'm pretty sure you have not heard before. For anyone who needs a refresher, the parable of the wheat and the tares, Jesus tells this story. He says, the kingdom of God is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. And while he slept, his enemy came in and sowed tares. And when they began growing together, the servant said, why are there tares in the field? Do you want us to go take them out? And the landowner says, no, leave them be, and we'll separate them at the time of harvest. And it's this story, it's one of quite a few stories Jesus tells where there's no real ending and there's no explanation. Like, he says this stuff and you're like, okay. And then everybody theorizes, well, he's saying this because he doesn't want to hurt the wheat. And he does this because, he even cares about the tares. I've heard that one. People come up with all these theories about what's going on. And then, it gets turned into doctrine somewhere along the way. But it occurred to me, so I read an explanation of this problem of having tares sown into a field of wheat, because it was actually, there were laws at the time forbidding this behavior because it was super damaging to that current crop. But the other issue is that, so wheats and tares look very, very similar through much of their development. So it's difficult to tell the difference and recognize that there's a problem before the roots are all wound up together. But the bigger thing is that tare seeds fall. Wheat, when we can harvest it because it stays on the stalk. Tare seeds, just harvesting it is going to dislodge the seeds. So they're not just going to be able to, take them down and burn them. As they do this, they're going to be sowing the seeds into the field for the next year. See the problem here? Okay. So what is going on? Why would the landowner say no? Because wouldn't it make more sense before the tare went to seed to just, even if you had to take the whole thing down, you're looking at a multi-year disaster. If somebody has done this to your fields and you allow those tares to go to seed. So, but then it occurred to me, well, we know now that, breeding can create, changes in plants. I mean, we've always known that, most of our food has been bred, going back into ancient times. Wheat was bred, it didn't just stay on the stalk naturally like that. So what if the farmer did this and had the servants hold back wheat from that field, or wheat seeds from that field to sow for the next year? And, maybe had the field burned to take down some of the seeds and all of that planted with the same wheat, and then allowed this process to play out for a few years, holding back the best, the largest grains of wheat that grew under the conditions of having to compete with the tares. And isn't it possible that a trait would emerge from the wheat that did well growing among the tares that could eventually result in a wheat, and I'm sure there's more to it than this. I don't actually know a great deal about how to create new strains of things, but, we know how it works. We know how this works. It is entirely possible that there's something kind of latent within the the DNA, the genetics, however that magic in the seed works of the wheat plant that would allow it to develop resistance to to the issue of growing with the tares, to be able to outgrow the tares, to maybe even be able to be different enough to separate the two before the tares are, in danger of going to seed and the roots are all wound up. I mean, it seems entirely possible that if a landowner decided to use this field as an experiment to develop a strain of wheat that could outcompete the tares, if your enemy wants to come in and sow your field with tares, it's not going to destroy your crop, right? That's a super valuable thing. And in fact, if the farmer was able to develop a strain like that, they could provide it to their neighbors, which would make all of their wheat, less vulnerable to this sort of malicious behavior. And I shared this theory with a friend once who had a background, I believe he'd been done animal husbandry and stuff, and he was a little taken aback because he was like, well, I just know that that's like a really harsh process. There's no sentimentality. There's no, it's either it's good enough or it's not, sort of thing. And he knows much more about that than I do. But realistically, if you look at the world that we live in, there are a lot of us, I think, who probably feel like wheat growing among tares. Like, what the heck are we doing in the middle of this crap here, But if your goal was to not simply if your goal was to not simply recover from the problem created by somebody malicious coming in and sowing tares in your good field, wouldn't it make sense to invest in figuring out how to neutralize the damage, the harm that can be done by such behavior? If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me. And so I kind of think maybe that is what God's been doing with us. Maybe, going back to the prayer I said, that I shared, last week or something, where it was like, well, God knows me and what I'm capable of better than I know myself, And I actually have thought for the longest time that's kind of like God's secret weapon, is that he made us. He knows what's inside us. He knows what we're capable of. And so he knows what we can overcome. He knows what we, maybe that's why he's not as concerned with the wheat and the tares, having grown together as we might like him to be, because maybe he's growing people who can overcome, who won't be so vulnerable to this sort of malicious behavior. So anyways, just an idea I have. I thought I'd share it with you this morning. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I love you. Go to my website, buy merchandise, hire me to build a website. Go to my Patreon. I had a Sunday sermon up this weekend. It was on why I am not a pagan. I promise you have not heard this before. I don't think. I really doubt it. Anyways, head over there. You need more Rebecca in your life. You know you do. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.